Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. So I would appreciate it if someone who's watching can confirm that the sound is okay, since I don't know what's up with that, but keeps being weird at the start of a stream. Anyway, I will just start making paint. And like I said yesterday in the stream, I'm just working on a little bit of production here while I'm streaming. So I'm making PV16, phthalic turquoise, and it's a very hydrophobic, very fine pigment. And I'm not going to use the big muller for this. No. Am I? Let's use a smaller one. So with this, as I've showed multiple times, I'm going to spread out the binder first around the pigment. Let's introduce a little bit more light here. So why I do this, I want to create a sticky layer around the pigment for basically the pigment to kind of catch on. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of pigment at a time. As you can see, little swirls of pigment, and it's already coloring the binder around it here. Why do I do this? Although I do have a good air filtration system here, I don't want all these fine pigment particles flying around. So I won't be mixing them with my palette knife as I usually do. You can see already how much pigment there is on the sides sticking to the muller. I want to have as much control over this as possible. So this is why I'm doing it like this. Obviously you can pre-mix it with alcohol, but as I've said before, that makes quite a mess. With the gum arabic, it needs an entire new kind of step to let the alcohol evaporate first. Before you're introducing the gum arabic to it. I can show it to you once, but I won't do it with paint that I actually want to sell later on. So while it's still quite early in the chat here, I will quickly have a look if the sound is okay. Let me have a look. Looks like the sound is fine. So we'll just continue. Ryder, good morning. Might be a bit of noise in the sound though, because my air conditioning is on with heating, so there's that, but I will just leave that on. As you can see, there's already a beautiful greenish blue happening on the slab. Let me check if I can quickly put it a little bit more in the middle, like this. There you go. So basically what I'm doing now is I just want to introduce the hydrophobic pigment, fine hydrophobic pigment, to the binder. I will add a little bit more binder later on for mulling it. Just want to pre-mix all the pigment with the binder first. Yeah, this is phthalo turquoise, as I would call it. The jar, where is it? Says it's phthalo blue greenish. On the camera, it's definitely more blue than in real life. This is more like a dark teal to a turquoise on my slab, but very dark. And it's masked down here. Quickly have a look if I can do something with that, but probably not. Let me have a look if I can. This is not catching the green in it, but no, we'll just leave it like this. Yeah, phthalo 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. That's a different version than this. Although Phthalo the 15.3 is a Phthalo blue green shade, this is completely different. So that literally gives a very nice blue. I probably can show you the difference in the swatches here. If I have the blues over here. Let me have a look. There you go with this one. And this one. So this is the difference. Camera makes it kind of hard to show, but we can have a look here if this is better. Not really. Might be able to show you later. It does show quite a difference. Yeah, you saw the difference on camera, but still it didn't really show the green as much. Yeah. So this is basically, I call this a turquoise. Especially in washes. Whereas in a mask tone, it's more like a darker green leaning color. So as you notice, I need a little bit more binder. And I'm going to make it a little bit more wet to help introduce the pigment, since there's still quite a lot of dry pigment. Going to spray that where the dry pigment isn't, because then it would still be flying around. And I'm just trying to avoid that with this method. Might take a little bit longer to do it like this, but having, looking at what you otherwise end up with cleaning afterwards, I think this is definitely worth it. Nami-sao, welcome. Thanks for joining. It's quite a difficult pigment to mix with the binder. It's also quite one of the more difficult pigments to mull in a way that you don't see any pigment particles. You can see it in the reflection here clearly on camera, all the grittiness. Well, basically, when you put it really simply, a quinacridone and a phthalo would both give you a hard time on that front. So yeah, the pigment particles, they are visible, but that is... Oh, I'm just mixing it, so I'm just wetting the pigment. I'm not yet mulling. In my case, mulling would use a lot more force than I would do now. I'm just now mixing it. trying to get everything away from its dry state. And still, there's a little bit of blue on my hands already. While I'm being extra careful, it still happens. Thank you, Michelle. And thanks for joining. If you're here, by the way, and you enjoy, the process of making paint or previous streams or videos or anything like that, please like this stream. I'd like to think it helps with kind of spreading this channel to a bigger audience. Maybe people that don't know about it will find it because maybe YouTube will recommend it. I don't know, but it wouldn't hurt, I think, to try it. There's the last bit, and it is very sticky already, so I really want to get to the point where I can start mulling this. First I need to get rid of all the dry pigment. Thank you, Namisao. Appreciate it. Also, I scheduled the live stream for next week. Next week is going to be a very busy day for me, so hopefully I can make it on time. I scheduled it for half an hour later than usual. If you want to get a notification when I go live, there's a button underneath the planned live stream on my channel. You can click on notify me and you get a notification when I go live. The shell, let's have a look if I can get my mouse on this screen. Where's my mouse? I've lost my mouse. Maybe it works when I just turn my trackpad on. That would be helpful as well. Sylvie's welcome. What are simple pigments that you can make? I take it that you mean make into paint, because making pigments yourselves isn't that simple, but making it into paint, I always recommend kind of, yellow ochre works beautifully. It's quite cheap, or an ultramarine blue, also very affordable and easy to make. A little bit smelly. Chromium oxide, PG17 is also a great one. Yeah, right, that's PG17. It's also a great one. Very opaque, natural green. There are some beautiful red ochres, although some can be quite difficult because they are harder to make into a beautiful paint in a pen. Some might crack, some might fall out of the pen. That's a little bit more experimenting, while ultramarine, it just works. Potter's Pink, beautiful pigment. If you have a good mask for more kind of hazardous pigments, cobalt pigments work beautifully as well. They are a joy to mull, I have to say. Thank you. It takes a long time for me to make those, but I will definitely try to make it a more regular thing. Things like this, for instance. Now I've been wetting this for 30 minutes now. It's quite hard to make an interesting video about this with just footage like this. So I tend to kind of look for the more interesting pigments to look at. This is, it's definitely worth it to make a video for this as well, for any educational purposes. But I really need to kind of my fingers already kind of a bit stained with the blue-green here. And that's mostly from my muller. So as you can see, I'm very careful, and yet it ends up on the side of my muller. So there's a bit of caution here with making this, and if you wanna keep things clean, but it shouldn't stop you from using hydrophobic pigments like this. I've introduced all the pigment to the binder. Now I'm going to add a little bit more water in my last bit of binder to actually start mulling this. So camera doesn't catch the green in this at all. When I make like a transparent part here, it looks, I don't know, it has nothing to do with light, or zooming in. But this is actually quite green for me. A very deep turquoise. So right now I'm literally just mulling it, a lot of pressure on the slab. Also I'm looking at it a lot, since there's still some kind of pigment particles. You can see it in this part over here. There's still some grittiness in the reflection, and I fully want to get rid of that. Although a little bit of it isn't quite, you know, a bad thing. I can still see some over here, but that's also the pigment particles that are just very, I don't know, more clearly visible than with other pigments. Although it is a very fine pigment. So to make sure that the edges aren't drying too much, and I'm giving everything the same amount of attention, I'm going to scrape everything together. For me, this is a really deep turquoise right now. Don't forget about your muller too. Not only the bottom of your muller, also the sides, because that is where the dry pigments kind of still sticks around. You want to get that off your muller and incorporate that into the paint, because if you're still mulling and some dry pigment particles fall on top of your finished paint, you'll end up having unmixed pigment particles in your watercolor paint as well. You don't want that, especially with this pigment, which won't mix out of itself. Sentient Send, welcome. Thanks for joining, and good day. Thanks for pointing it out, Ryder. Yeah. It's quite quite a bit of work to get things right. Yeah, that's actually all I can say. also all the work that kind of the behind the scene is the behind the screen work. You know, finding the right pigments, doing that kind of research, not just buying pigments from a store and then, you know, mixing it and selling it, but really finding the good pigments that you like. It takes a lot of time. All the experiments, all the things that come with, you know, also being a small business. It also takes a lot of time that you could otherwise spend on making paint. But that's, you know, that's part of the job. I don't mind, but I can't compete with the big brands either. And that's I'm going to be really honest about that. And I don't want to be honest. Because I can never win that. Let's have a look. You have a question regarding the binder. I didn't disclose my recipe. No, that, you know, company secret. Jackson's recipe: 12 parts of gum arabic, 1 part honey, 1 part glycerin. Let me have a look. 12 parts gum arabic as a solution, you mean? Let me think. Then I need to make some calculations. 12 parts. It's usually 1:2 gum arabic to water. So that will be 8 parts water, 4 parts. A fourth. That's about right, I think. It's about right. And we're talking volume here, right? Not in weight. As you know, as far as I know, it can't be 50-50 with the at least 50-50 if we're talking about gum arabic to water. Gum arabic will dissolve. This is kind of thinking, you know, how I do it, but gum arabic will only dissolve with twice the amount of water in weight, that is, by the way. For water, weight and volume are the same. But I don't know how they make their gum arabic solution. So you know, after you have dissolved the gum arabic, you can always kind of let some water evaporate to have like a thicker consistency. So that's, you know, that's possible to get a thicker, like honey, more like honey like structure, more syrupy when you evaporate the water out of it after it has been dissolved. But you're going to let it evaporate anyway, and you need the water content to make it easier to mix. Eventually you're going to add water to it anyway when you do that. So, but the first thing you said, that seems about right. Maybe when you use when you say 60 gum, 5 glycerin, 5 honey, 2.5 oxgal is kind of a bit much. For me, it's a few drops to get a nice consistency to my binder, and I'm not adding it to certain pigments more than others. I know some brands do that. I know some people say that is the more professional way, or the way it, some pigments don't need it, so you don't add it, and some pigments need it more. But I would only use it a little bit if it's about the way your binder kind of feels. I'm talking about oxgal here. Ian, good morning. The shell, welcome again. A higher content of oxgal or synthetic oxgal would be used if you want an easier job dispersing your pigments. But it will also influence the entirety of all the aspects of your paint. So basically, put very simply, don't use too much oxgal, since all your pigments will flow on the paper. It changes the tension of the water. So it makes it easier to mull pigments with a lot of surfactant, like oxgal, but it also changes the way your paints behave on the paper. And you don't want everything to flow everywhere, especially when you're working wet and wet, or when you want to make mixes on paper. For me, I want the pigment properties to shine on their own, for themselves. And the few drops of oxgal that I use is just for the consistency of my paint and how it feels like for the user. That's more like a feel thing, rather than completely changing how a pigment behaves on paper. If it works for you, like I said, I don't know if we're talking parts. I don't know how it influences your pigments or the things that you've tried. If it works for you, don't change it. That's all I can say, because I don't know your exact situation with the paints and with the pigments. That looks like it is perfect. Let's get some pens. First I'm going to wash my hands. I don't want the pans to be blue before I fill them. It's not a stupid question at all, Sylvie. I do make fresh paint for every layer. Yeah, this is phthalo greenish blue. I call it phthalo turquoise. And I know it doesn't show it on the slab here. That's a little bit closer. There's quite a difference there. But yeah, phthalo turquoise in my case. I'll make fresh paint for all the layers that some exceptions, especially when I make bigger batches with easier pigments. But in this case, and it's mostly phthalo green, by the way, but with phthalos, since not since, especially phthalo green, it tends to get moldy quite quickly when you store it in a jar or anything like that. You can put it in a syringe, for instance, where you lock it without air. But I don't want to get mold on my paint when it's ready for the next layer. As you can see, it's quite thick, the paint consistency. It is quite a thick paint, so scooping it in a pan is literally done like this for me. I could add more water to it, but it's like a non-Newtonian fluid. When it rests like this, it gets kind of stiffer. When I add a lot of friction, I know, I don't think a non-Newtonian fluid is, I think that's the other way around actually. I don't know what this would be called. But when you add a lot of friction, it gets more fluid. So if I would put this in a jar, for instance, and I would shake it thoroughly, I can more easily pour this than when I let it sit like this. Sorry for the noise, by the way. Oh, that's quite painful, Sentient. This is this should be a beautiful, transparent, deep turquoise color. So adding a titanium would make the turquoise tint to this more obvious, but it's a shame they did that. Ah, thank you for confirming that. Thank you, Sentient. let's try a way of doing this without making too much noise. I think this can work as well. I don't want to cover my fingers with this. That would make cleaning the pans quite a difficult job for me, if any cleaning is needed. So for the regular viewers here, and I think most of you who are in the chat actually are, I've already put up the planned stream for next week Wednesday. So you can, get a notification. It's on my channel with the lives, and it says as a planned one. It is planned for next week Wednesday. And as soon as I go live with the countdown even, you'll get a notification or an email. So you are in time or you don't miss it if you want to join. Cleaning when dry is better, yeah. Absolutely. So I'm not going to clean them now. I can smear out all kind of wet paint that will be on the side. But grabbing a pen with paint on my fingers, since these are 3D printed pens, it will get kind of in the grooves, in the letters. It will make it quite hard to clean them properly. Also, sometimes it happens that a kind of drop overflows from the pen. There are times that I'm just going to keep those on there because sometimes it's just like a thick drop of paint over the edge, and it's more paint for whoever gets that pen. So if you don't appreciate that, let me know. But taking that off, it's literally sometimes just breaking off that dot is just a dot of paint that you could otherwise get kind of for free-ish. Cleaning isn't especially with a pigment like this, quite staining, isn't the most fun thing to do. Well, let's have a look if I can with this color. A nice nap sounds like a good idea, Silver. Hopefully it wasn't because of my stream, guys, that there was a collective bad night of sleep. Kind of had the same issue. Need to get a new one of these as well. The spring in it is kind of broken. Oh, sure. It's not the most exciting part, but I can assure you I will get this clean rider. Enjoy your lunch. Yeah, this is... So what I'm doing, I'm making sure that all the dried paint everywhere is kind of wets again, so the parts that are kind of hard already, I will make sure that these will completely dissolve before I start cleaning it. That is for my muller, my palette knife, my slab. Everything. But you know, this is way too blue. Here you can see a bit of the... No, still not yet. Let's have a look if my phone can handle it. That's a bit better. Also, that's a weird connection now. But that's a bit better when it comes to the green. I would need more cloths than just one, by the way. So as you might be able to see, that's really hard to see now, but you see a little bit of blue here still on the muller, but I will do that in the second go. Just get rid of the majority of the pigment that is still on the slab. And just repeat the step. Use a lot of water for this. So I'm never using any chemicals on my slab. Sometimes, really sometimes, I'm using a very pure isopropanol alcohol, 99.9%, to get rid of a very staining pigment, for instance, as usually reds, in the rare case that I need to do it. But I never use anything like any glass cleaning chemicals or anything like that. Now I feel very guilty, Ian. That looks like it's quite clean. You can see a difference here. No blue anymore. For my plate is a little bit harder. But we just need a bit more water for that. So this is that, and for this pigment, because I know it will, I'm going to make another round of cleaning. First, let me clean this off as well. But having a good binder that reactivates with water very quickly helps a lot, I must say. So not counting this, since this came from my Heckman gauge, but there's still a bit of blue left on the slab. Yeah, Ian, that's I have it for that as well. So I usually buy a jerry can of it, mostly for cleaning my printers, and then now and then filling a little spray bottle for my slab. But I also use it to clean my my FDM printers, the build plates of it. Using that on a PEI plate, I have to say it works wonders. I never use any glue or things like that. Never did. Over the last 4 years, I think. Just a spritz of IPA and going over it with a clean cloth, and that makes my prints stick. So, speaking of resin printers, okay, in that case I don't feel guilty. Speaking of resin printers, I made a little resin 3D print of my my Muller scan, although I did need to check, because the edge is a bit weird here, I do need to check the leveling the build plate for it, but it turned out quite nice as a kind of small Muller. It does miss the details in it because my scanner can't read those details, but for the model that I made out of it, it's actually kind of a cute version. Completely useless though, but it's nice anyway. Let me have a look. What's to do? I can do another completely annoying hydrophobic pigment. First, let me change this real quickly, because we can, so why not do it? Is there anything nice I can put in the background now? Nothing that actually suits the pigment I want to work with now, but I can do a kind of a bad attempt at it. Not very accurate though. Let's make dioxazine violet. Whereas the pigment I'm showing here behind me is nothing but that. It's ultramarine violet actually. That's the only violet I had. Let me quickly get this. Change this as well. PV23. Okay. So this is all good. And since I want to prepare for making this, I'm first going to make a cup of coffee. After I put another layer, because I washed my hands before filling the pans, I washed off the invisible glove lotion that I use, that I especially use for making these pigments. And I really want to get this on my hands before I start working with these, and it needs to dry. It makes cleaning your hands really easy. If you don't do this with a phthalo or a dioxazine or a quinacridone or anything like that, and you get it on your hands, it's quite hard to get off without like harsh soaps or things like that. Sanding paper maybe. So I cut myself just 5 minutes before the stream. I was cleaning the measuring spoons I used yesterday, and I want to put one back, and I just, put it in a little jar I have over there. And there's one that just went like over my nail through the, the thin skin above my nail there. And there was just I hit it with just a very, very tiny bit, but it just went straight through. Sentient, these pigments are a great way of having that kind of note in your head of not forgetting it as a permanent thing, because PV23, now I'll use PV23 actually. PV37 is also dioxazine violet, and that's the one that Kramer sells. I use a different version, which I like a little bit better, but that's just my preference. I think in mixes they're kind of the same. Let's see if we can, maybe we can compare it. Then we need to find PV37 as a watercolor there as a pigment, and let's just go to pigments. PV23 and 37. So it's not really helpful looking at things like this. That is not the right screen I'm sharing here. Which screen am I sharing here? I'm here. I'm on a different website. So I'm not quite sure which screen it was sharing, because there's this, and if I scroll it, it's not moving for you, so that's really useless. Okay, I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to look into it now. I can show you, I can describe it to you, which is maybe this? Nah, also not. It kind of looks the same. I noticed that the swatches of the PV23 on the website look a little bit more vibrant-ish, although Roman Small's one does that as well. That is PV37. I don't know. I don't see a lot of difference. The PV23 on Kramer's website, yeah, there was something with it. I think that was one of the studio pigments, wasn't it? Yeah, studio pigment violet. It has a filler in it. Like, it looks like a deep black in real life, whereas the pigment there looks like a beautiful violet. And it has a XSL pigment, which is also PV23. XSL is a treated pigment that makes it easier to get it to a water-based binder. But it's a treated pigment. It's not a pure one. The other one is, has a filler in it. The version I have. Very carefully open it. Looks like this, and it's almost black. So there's a difference there. Same for in the pen. If this dries, it looks like a kind of a shiny black paint with kind of a yellow violet-ish, if you know what I mean, shimmer to it. It's a kind of a weird shimmer on the top layer that gives it away that this is this pigment. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. I can leave this on, or I can do this, and I think this is a bit better. Paolo, welcome. I just made a cup of coffee. So, I think it's a week ago you were complaining about too many ads. I didn't change it with this stream because this was I didn't really plan this for the stream yesterday, and next week I did put the ads on minimum. So hopefully you do notice a difference there. I've been here for an hour and a half already, old days. But thanks for joining. No, but Paolo, it's it did bother me a bit that more people or people started noticing it more, and it was kind of bothering them as well. So I put them on a minimum. I didn't change those settings before ever because I really didn't think about it, but more people started noticing it, and maybe because my channel is kind of growing lately. Actually, I grew a lot over the last few weeks because of that one reel that went viral. It now has almost 5.5 million views, which is crazy for 7 seconds of making paint. But maybe because of the higher activity on my channel, YouTube is pushing the ads a bit more as well. I'm afraid that's the case. But my counter says 6,350 followers. So that is a lot more than a few months ago. So it might just be YouTube who does that, since I put it on automatic. Thank you. So I really hope within those few thousand people who joined this channel over the last months, I really hope that there's an active community somewhere within those people, and not just people who follow for liking one reel or short. It was. I'm afraid that will be the case, but I'm not paying too much attention to that. But having more ads and things like that, or people having to click it away more, is something that would give me a little bit of income. But especially during the lives, I think it's better to not have that at all, and people enjoy the live stream and actively contribute to the chat than people leaving because of the ads. Because, to be honest, this is not like a channel focused on live streaming. And looking at the activity of of our little community here, I don't think there's a lot of income for it ad-wise, but I do appreciate all the effort, all days especially. Thank you. All bits help a bit, obviously. So I'm about to make dioxazine violet, and I know this is not dioxazine violet around me, but that's the only purple image that I could find quickly. That's funny. Oh, that is extreme, Paolo. I've never heard that. That is extreme. Now, last week when you said that, I actually paused the ads. I can do that, but it's only for 15 minutes, I think. I can have a look. I can just pause them now and have a look what they... 10 minutes even. I can change those settings. I can't change the for a longer period of time. And I'm not sure if I turn off the ads here, that they will completely be turned off in the replay as well, which I wouldn't mind having ads. Last few streams, a watercolorist noticed some as well, and I got a bit more of it, so. No, that's mostly it. Don't the does the live continue while you're watching an ad? I didn't know that. Since you can rewind it, you know, it's not that you need to do that, but YouTube can kind of pause it, play an ad, and then continue it, but that would kind of give loads of gaps in the chat and the live reactions. So it's weird stuff. It should actually just notify me here. Already kind of starting making paint here. It should actually notify me here and that there is an ad coming, like an everyone at the same time, as if it were television. So now, but you should have 7.5 minutes without any ad now still. So you can see me making a mess of PV23. It's close to black. It obviously is not black. But it's a very dark and staining tinting pigment with a gray drying shift. A terrible drying shift. With grade, I meant like a huge drying shift. It goes from a very deep violet, for those of you who don't know the pigment or haven't seen it like from pigment to paint, it goes from a very deep violet to a very desaturated one. This is a very dusty pigment, yeah. Very hydrophobic as well. And you can see how staining it is. Let me just mix this in, just a little bit of pigment, mix it in here. And this, like the tiniest bit of pigment that still looks like a lot because of the streaks, but that is how staining it is. And it's already kind of making a grayish violet at first in its transparency. But as soon as more pigment is introduced, you can see it in the, like how the muller breaks the light, there is a deep violet in there. This is the second one actually, all days. You missed the first part of the stream where I made phthalo turquoise, PB16. Also a very hydrophobic, very light and dusty pigment. Thank you all days. I'm glad you found the live stream. As you can see, there's already a beautiful violet on the slab, although when this is mixed, this will look, again, almost fully black. As you can see here, just introduced a little bit more pigment to it, and my camera is already kind of trying to balance the light out. As you can see here, this is not shadow, all the light comes from this side. So if I put my hands here, the camera is kind of trying to balance everything out. It's going to have a hard time with this pigment. I think the most beautiful thing about dioxin violet, especially making paint. Thanks for joining, Sylvie. I hope you have a great day today. So one of the most beautiful things about this is when you mix all the pigment in, you end up with kind of a layer of almost black paint. When you have that transparency, or when you scrape it off your slab, the most vibrant violet, almost fluorescent violet shows. Kind of already see what I'm talking about here and this, but this wasn't even half of the pigment that I mixed with it yet. It's also one of the pigments that is known to have brighteners in it, even in the highest quality of paints. I don't do it. I have been thinking about it, and the brighteners in the paints are to kind of counteract the loss of chroma, the drying shift that this pigment has, to keep it like a more vibrant violet, as you can see here. Don't sneeze at it. Mostly, yeah. That's. I think that's that sums it up quite nicely. It does leave a little bit of pigment on the muller while I'm being very careful. And if you watch the replay, the phthalo turquoise that I made before this did the same thing. This is just a smear that I took off, and it's still on my finger. It leaves clear marks on my slab. So in a minute, my ads will be able to pop up freely again. YouTube was kind enough to notify me about that. So 30 more seconds. Please, everyone, let me know if you immediately get an ad. I want to know how eager YouTube is to show ads after I post them. What causes the drying shifts? Oh, that's a very good question. I know it's a pigment property. What causes it? There's a little speck of dust here. I don't know. It could be. But it's, yeah, Paolo. But like, it's weird that paints like this have that like so heavily lose so much of its chroma, its saturation when drying, and others don't. It makes sense, but then I still wouldn't know why this pigment is acting differently with water. Yeah, that basically sums it up. So the thin layer I'm creating around this, I still have about a third of pigment left here. I don't have a swatch of PV37. I do have the pigment. I don't have a swatch here. I once made it, swatched it, compared it. But that is a long time ago, and I really don't know where that is. At least not within a range that I can get to it right now during the live. So you see that, and this is what apparently, I don't know why, this is what the camera does kind of catch. There's this red kind of sheen, shimmer, as if, you know, almost an oily layer on it. That also shows when the pigment is dry in the pan. It looks like a black from a distance, but when you have the right angle, you can see that reddish reflection over it. What's the most messy pigment I had to deal with? I'm thinking one of the deep blues, anthracnone blue, PB60 for instance. PB10 I made last week. That was, since it's used as a dye, very fine, very dusty, very staining. Not one of the most messiest. I think the messiest. A lot of things pop up in my head now. Basically, with messy, I also think about cleaning it, or while making it, you know, the smell of it. Dragon's blood, for instance, has quite a harsh smell to it, but it's not messy to clean. I don't know. I don't know, it's really hard to answer that. Powder, yes, the edges look rather violet. It is also because the edge of my muller kind of scrapes away a little bit of pigment and leaves a darker edge around it. So if I do this, for instance, on one spot a lot, without introducing more, it's quite hard to do without introducing more paint. You should get, you can't see it on camera, can you? No. Okay, I will do it when I have a little bit more water to it when I'm finished mixing. But it's also definitely light, you know, from the plate, since all the light comes from the side here. So for people interested in making these kind of things, Sebastian, welcome. For people interested in making paints, pigments like this, take your time with these. I think that is key. So if I add a little bit more water and I do this a little bit more, you can see that transparency shining through here. That is mostly the side of the muller scraping things off. Remember, I'm not mulling right now. I'm just and only incorporating the pigment to the binder while using a muller. So it is a bit of milling, but I'm not using a lot of pressure on the muller, on the slab yet, because I want to mix this pigment in the binder properly first before I start doing that. Andrea, welcome. Thanks for joining. So same with PB16 I made earlier. You see the grittiness in the paint here. That grittiness is just, you know, showing us the dry pigment being pre-wetted, kind of being introduced with the binder, but not being milled yet, or not having been milled yet. So that's the part of the milling process after this, getting that grittiness away and make it into a smooth paint. So to Ian, there's a trick for that. If you put an add, like the add sign before it, and just type the, okay, never mind, Paolo, thank you very much. Great minds think alike, I think. I'm really struggling with words, I also notice. Maybe it's the hydrophobic pigments. I don't know. So just the @ sign and then the first letters of the username, it kind of takes it out of the chat, you know, for whatever user there is, and it helps you. So there's, I was looking at it, top of my muller. There's a lot of pigment. Still, it's not flying around. It's not like, it's not here. It's not on the side of my slab as well. It is, showed that with fingers that were already kind of violet. It's not here, but it is here on the muller a little bit. So all the pigment is introduced to the binder. Now going to add some water to it to also make it easier to mill, have a little bit more control over it. It's weird. It doesn't feel like it if you go over it quite fast. It doesn't feel like you have more control over it. But think as, you know, same with cooking. Having a very sharp knife is way better because you have way more control over a sharp knife than a blunt knife. A paint that is very smooth like this with a lot of water, that makes mistakes quite easy to make, but it also is giving you more control. So if I would kind of shoot off my slab, it would make way more of a mess than if I use less water. Same with a sharp knife. If you have an accident, that will be it could be way worse than a fully blunt knife. Although cutting yourself with a blunt knife leaves your skin quite well. I know that's not for now, maybe, but so this is what I'm talking about. It's almost black looking for me. Camera catches the reflection because the light comes from that side. For me, from this side, it looks like a black with that like red sheen over it. If I go over it like this, and I use a lot of force, you see that violet, that's very vibrant violet, that's the one I was looking for, shining through. I did put away my phone, but let's have a look if there is something with the connection. I don't know what it is, but it shows it a little bit better. So the first step after introducing the pigment to your binder, giving it a good mull, giving you a good workout as well. But you can see it's a very dark pigment, and my camera is just kind of compensating for it because, you know, you see my camera and my microphone and my extra boom arm for my phone here for when I'm shooting videos. You see the reflection of it, which usually doesn't happen with pigments. Gulchen, welcome. Yep. Making the oxygen violet and showing you the magic of this pigment as I am going to scrape it off the slab for the first time. Okay, this is always quite a fascinating part of making this paint. This is what I was talking about. It's a slap in your face, almost fluorescent violet that just, wow. I think this is the most fun and rewarding part for making a more difficult paint like this. This is what the PB10 of last week kind of did for me in blue. Whereas this is like the violet version of it. But this violet is just, it's just beautiful. Oh, that's okay, Gulchen. I very much appreciate it. Really, my words today. I appreciate that you dropped by anyway. So same for the muller. In this kind of phase of the paint making, you want to get rid of all the dry pigment left on your muller. So I know you don't really see it. Violet is too overpowering. But you want to get rid of as much as possible of the dry pigment that's kind of sticking to your muller, especially to the sides here, since we're going to go over it once more. Then you see the difference in mass tone and what it would be in a wash if it didn't have such a drying shift, or if you add a lot of brightness to it. But there's already a drying shift happening here. As you can see, this is a deeper violet than the surrounding area here, which has kind of a pink sheen to it again. This is still wet, whereas this is already kind of dry. Happy I put on the invisible gloves. But it's starting to be a very smooth paint already. How do I clean staining paint? You really should have joined us an hour earlier. No, it's okay. Just with water and a cloth. I said before in the chat, I didn't say anything in the chat. I was working with quite a staining pigment with dirty hands, so I didn't say anything in the chat. But I said before in the stream, I never use any chemicals on my slab, apart from some alcohol for really bad pigments, and it's usually reds. But I think 99 out of the 100 times or even maybe more often, I can do with just water and a clean cloth, and go over it a couple of times with another clean cloth. The pigments are also chemicals, yes, but you know what I mean, right? No glass cleaner or kitchen cleaner or anything that I don't want to have in my paint. You know what I mean. And only like isopropyl alcohol, 99.9%. And after that, I even wash my slab with water, but that's just to get, mostly with the reds, to get any stains off that might have like stayed on the glass. Hope you have a good day at work, Gulchen. Thanks for joining. See ya. I have to say, this part never gets boring with this pigment. Also, because it's such a fine pigment, it's turning into a very smooth and fine paint. Just scraping off is quite easy. Scraping together the paint, really not scraping it off, since that thin layer I can't get off. There's quite a bit of staining paint on there still. But it's definitely on there. Quickly going to see and check my dispersion. Needs a little bit more mulling. I can show you how I just saw that. Taking this off first. So there's a grain of pigment leaving a line straight through the middle there. Most of it is good. There's just a lump of pigment that wasn't properly milled yet. Now my hands are actually really dirty. So it needs a little bit more milling. It's getting even more vibrant, as you can see here. When it's wet, like wetted with water, a real punchy violet. My muller is kind of running off. I told you I would manage to clean it brighter. And welcome back. This might prove to be even more difficult. It's even more tinting. Maybe the paper towel isn't like absorbing enough, or maybe it isn't rough enough for it. Like right now, I think this used to be an old pillowcase. I use old t-shirts for it, white t-shirts, things like that. Yeah, it works great for me. I think we're actually there with milling the paint, looking at it, because there's a clear difference for me from this angle, with just that extra bit of milling. So there's that beautiful transparent. I ran out of cloths a while back. It was still in my old studio. And I used paper towel for it. And the worst part about using paper towels is that it leaves kind of, especially when you're cleaning quite thoroughly with it, it leaves the little paper bits. it made it only harder for me to actually clean it. It's really weird looking at my muller from this side. It has like a blue reflection to it. Just going to have a look if I can show you here. My hands are a bit dirty though, but yeah, there you go. You see that weird blue reflection with the red kind of sheen over the top of the pigment. It's how the light breaks. I don't know what it does, but I love that it shows blue. Just showing us how the light and different wavelengths are reflected to us in this pigment. There's a lot of red in here, there's a lot of blue in here, a lot of all kinds of things in here that make it look this vibrant, at least in its wet state. It's quite a magical pigment when it comes to all the differences it shows in its different phases of making it. Let's do a quick swipe. Perfect. Perfect. Leaving this somewhere where there isn't any paint. Let's have a look. I'm first going to wash my hands, then I'm going to have a look. Yeah, I have enough pans of it still, luckily. So using the invisible gloves really helps with getting your hands clean with a pigment like this. Yeah, safe to use and fill my pans. Let's see how far we get with these. Very different from the paint I made before, where I can actually just drop this in, and the one I made before this, the phthalo turquoise, was a very thick pigment when it's kind of settling on the slab like this, as I said before, in non-Newtonian fluid, whereas this is still a little bit to the syrupy side. When we look at, you know, a close-up, filling it, it does flow, although a little bit slower, flow of my palette knife. and the PB16 before. Didn't do that at all. I really had to kind of like this, like scrape it off my palette knife on the side. Do you have it as a pigment writer or as a paint? Nice. A paint would also be nice, but it's a really nice pigment to make. And you know, especially when you look at things happening on the slab and things like that. Weird thing about this now, where I showed you the blue kind of refracted or reflected light in the muller. Right now it looks, well, you can see it on the camera as well. I know it is pinkish to violet when there's no dark paint underneath it. And the dark paint here, well, it's still very vibrant on the slab. I will show you when I'm going to clean it. It looks a lot more vibrant when I add water to it. Let me also get a piece of paper to make a swatch for you, so we can have a look at this huge drying shift that this paint has when you're not using any brighteners. Oh, that's awesome. How did you end up with the full range? How does that magically happen? So, I have to pay a lot of attention, focus on filling the pans. I don't want to make a mess with these. But that's that. Violet, violet, violet. There you are. So there's this. I'm actually going to turn that on. Sorry for the noise. for the extra noise. Paolo, I think I'm going to go offline, so if I don't see you anymore, thanks for joining. But, you know, please do your work things. Hopefully see you next week again. So let's make a quick swatch. So here you will be able to see what a deep violet this is. Just like this. I'm going to make a wash of it as well. Very similar to ultramarine violet, like this. On my paper, at least. It's a little bit more pink on camera. Very dark, very bright. I'm just going to leave this here. And I think I'm just going to turn on this camera to show you. Have a look. There we go. And let's fix the camera a bit. Where is this camera? There you go. There you are. Turn off the auto white balance. I think right now this is quite accurate. And you can just see it while it's drying. You can see it changing colors. You can see it like this as well. It's somewhere, it's more like you see on this camera here than it is, I don't know. It's weird. It's doing weird stuff. Just going to clean whatever I can clean. But, you know, I can get more off with my palette knife. Literally, I just can't get more paint off. And there's so much paint on it still when you add water to it. Oh, that's a shame. If you wanna use that, that is quite inconvenient that the iPad version doesn't do that. Maybe just in the browser of a Safari or something. Maybe does it work there? If you know, if you think it's a big of an issue, it's always good to check that, I think. So the drying shift is already kind of happening here, this part, losing a lot of its chroma. All days when this is dry, I'm going to show you how to properly clean this. So I basically start like this and make everything wet first. But let's make it more difficult and let it fully dry, whatever is surrounding this first, so that can dry as well. still see the wet spot over here. The rest of it is kind of already losing a lot of its chroma, a lot of its vibrancy. You can see it on the bottom of the wash here as well. It's losing a lot of that. Just as a comparison, I will use this paint, so that's why I'm leaving it here, to make a new swatch when that swatch has dried. Words are difficult today. When that swatch has dried. So you can see how much color shift there is, to give you a great example of what color shift actually is. I should implement those little things more in my lives so I can make shorts out of it, but I will do my best with this. It is getting more obvious, the drawing shift, and you know the camera has some difficulties with it. It always is kind of stays a beautiful violet, but when you, especially with this one, when you compare that to having a fresh swatch next to it, this one looks a little bit more vibrant on camera. The difference is real. It really does, Ryder. Yeah, it's this in combination with perylene green, for instance, makes for a beautiful, almost kind of neutral black, very deep. I had a limited kind of run on an experiment I actually made quite a lot of. I added gold mica to my slab in this state. So this is a dirty slab with a PV23 remains on it, and adding the mica. And just adding binder and water with that, and just, you know, with my palette knife mixing everything together, gave a beautiful, is separating-ish kind of violet golden violet. I can do it again, I think. Why not? So this is as good as dry. There's still quite some wet paint over here. Let's just use this. So just to show you the amount of drawing shift that this paint went through. Not the best swatch I've ever made, but this used to look like this. So this is drawing shift. In its wet state on paper, it looks very vibrant, and it loses a lot of its chroma, its vibrancy or saturation, whatever you want to call it, to make it obvious to you. It looked like this. This is a wash. It was a little bit more vibrant, but this difference is quite noticeable. Even if the camera has a lot of issues with catching the right colors, it is very noticeable on paper and on camera here. This almost looks like a perylene violet, whereas this looks like a very vibrant, I don't know, almost ultramarine when I put it in this angle, when it reflects a lot of the white light back to you. So yeah, this is color shift in a nutshell. drying shift. Oh, I said color shift, right? Drying shift, that is. I don't really have my golden mica near anywhere here right now. There are some boxes in front of that cupboard. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to clean it. So how to clean a slab like this with a very staining pigment. Use a lot of water. Spray it over your muller, over the sides of your muller, so all the dry pigment particles kind of wash off as well. And then just start mulling again. Making all the dried paint wet again. Some parts are a little bit thicker, especially the sides. So you need to go over it a couple of times with your muller. And here you just saw how much of that drying shift happened, even on the slab. This still has some violet in it. It's really hard to show you here, but if I get me away, you can actually see it here on the side. You have a bit of violet shining through. That's the reason I wanted to have a white color in my custom muller. Anyway, because I want to see if there's any colors kind of still left on the muller after cleaning it. So this was the first run of cleaning the muller. Now I'm going to get rid of the majority of the pigment on my slab. Like this. Obviously, if you want to make bigger batches of a paint like this, what I would do instead of cleaning it now, spraying this much water on it, I would just use your slab that you just used after you filled your pans and make a small batch after it again. It saves you a lot of time and cleaning and pigments flying around with hydrophobic pigments like this. So this will stain your cloths. Kind of like this. It will get most of it out, but I don't think I can wear this anymore. Wasn't meant to. Didn't plan on either. Wait, before I start cleaning it entirely again, let's just give this a quick spray as well. Kind of repeating myself right now, but having a good binder that is really reactivating quickly does help. Oh, it's stuck to the plate. Does help with cleaning a lot as well. So it's not only good for your paint, but also very convenient when you're cleaning your tools and there's dry paint on. Yes, there's dry paint on your tools. I really should get a new one because this one is speaking of having control over everything, that thing is broken. Make sure you use enough water for this. Still see some violet traces on here. Oh, that was on the side. Also, with the glass muller, I think, you know, only with the glass muller actually, the light that kind of refracts inside the muller sometimes makes it rather difficult to see where there's still pigment left. If it's on one side, the entire the widest part of the muller will kind of reflect the violet in this case. So you really need to check a couple of times kind of where it is and make sure you get it off everywhere. Also, it shows you, you know, that there's still some violet on there. So go over it a third time with a pigment like this, with, like, you know, the one I named before in the stream, ultramarine blue, ultramarine violet to have a violet compared to this, or an earth pigment, anything like that. It doesn't need like 3 rounds of cleaning. But it shouldn't be a bad thing either. I mean, it's not that difficult. It's not a dirty job or anything. You know, my hands aren't stained with a lot of pigment, just a bit. And also, and it might sound kind of too obvious, keep your dirty cloths away from your clean ones. I literally have my clean ones on a shelf there, and my dirty ones here in a box on the floor. But you don't want to have like a dry cloth that, you know, it looks, because it's stained the cloth a bit, it looks like you can use it, and you're, you know, introducing water to it again and it's staining even more. So in this step you want to check your cloth. It's still purple. I'm just going to use the same one again, just with a clean and dry side for a last wipe over it. That should do the trick. Still violet. Do I have enough cloth left here? Let's have a look. That's better. It's difficult with dirty cloths like this, but you know, having this compared to this is just the cloth being wet and having all the old pigments shining through that don't come out anymore. There you go. I think that was about it for today. 3:30 already, almost. So I'm going offline. Right, so if there's anything you would like to see in a future stream or anything else you would like me to answer, leave it in the chat, in the comments, wherever you like. Send me a message. I'll have a look what I can do. Hopefully everyone has a nice day. Nice day to you, Ryder, as well. Hopefully see you Wednesday during the weekly stream. I put it in the stream tab on my channel, so you can turn on the notification of that stream for next week. So if I go online, you get a notification or an email. So if you don't want to miss it, do it. Bye everyone. Andrea, Namisao, all days, everyone else who I am forgetting. Ian, if you're still here, I hope everyone has a great day and see you soon. Bye guys.